School is back, and Dick's Sporting Goods has what you need to win your year. We've got everything from cleats to Sambas, dunks, and more. Plus, the hottest looks from Nike, Jordan, and Adidas. Find your first day fits in-store or online at dicks.com.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, August 4th, 2024, as we record this episode. And, well, the Chicago White Sox did it, casting very little doubt in their voyage to what seems like to a bottomless pit. The White Sox were swept again by the Minnesota Twins and have lost 20 straight games. Prior to this weekend, Jerry Reinsdorf apparently is having enough of the losing and met with manager Pedro Grifol and general manager Chris Getz. We know that Grifol's job status is on the line. Is Getz also in trouble with Jerry? We'll talk about that. The White Sox continue playing baseball and will visit Oakland for the last time, which is a bit bittersweet. We'll preview the White Sox at A Series, highlight the red-hot hitting Brent Rooker, and because we don't want our love of baseball to completely die off because of the White Sox, we'll check in around Major League Baseball at the end of the show. Joining me are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And hello, gents. 20 straight losses for the White Sox. This hasn't happened since the 1988 Baltimore Orioles, who lost 21 games in a row. And the White Sox are just 3 games away from the all-time record by the Philadelphia Phillies, who lost 23 in a row. They did break that streak, fun fact, in Game 2 of a Sunday doubleheader back in 1961 against the Milwaukee Braves, and ended up going on a 4-game winning streak. So maybe if the White Sox ever snap this 20-game losing streak, Jim, we could see a winning streak if they follow the path of the Phillies. But Jim, 20 straight losses. Is it too hard to believe this has happened, or is it easy to believe this has happened for the White Sox?
It reminds me a little bit of that 13 walk inning I saw in Birmingham a few years ago, where at first it's like, oh, this is bad. This is, Alec Hansen comes in and it kind of starts the inning and you're thinking like, oh, this is not a recipe for success, just like the White Sox have struggled. And then you watch them and you think like, oh, they're issuing walks like you thought they would, or they're losing games like you thought they would. Like, and then there's a point where it's, oh, this is a lot of walks. Like, this is really, I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this. And then it gets like walk 8 or 9. And then you start expecting it, like a hit batter. Sure. Why not? And it just keeps piling up to where when they finally get out of the inning, then you're shocked like that it's actually over. And to me, we're getting to that point where you look at their starting pitching and you look at their bullpen and you see like, well, if Garrett Crochet can't throw more than 4 innings because of workload restrictions, you're kind of banking on either a Davis Martin who's building his way back up, or Chris Flexen, who is like every other start's a quality start, but the ones that aren't can be pretty rocky. And then like Jonathan Cannon is like the bastion of stability in the rotation right now, to where you need all these elements to line up to get a simple win. And that's when it starts looking impossible. That's like, theoretically it's a coin flip. When you talk about like 20 games in a row, it feels like the odds are losing a coin flip 20 times in a row, as we've seen with the White Sox, is probably a loaded coin. But now it feels like, it's almost like you're rolling a dice and you're thinking like, I need this one to end up on a 2. And in order to win, like every other dice roll is a loss. And it feels like that's what the White Sox are doing right now. Like the odds are stacked against them because of just how many innings the bullpen has to cover and how many guys in that bullpen are basically equipped for low leverage work at best. And if there's only low leverage work, it's because the White Sox are getting blown out and are just trying to get through the game. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now, is when they win, I'll be surprised. I guess Oakland provides a little bit of a respite in that regard, but still, like everything needs to go right for them to be like holding a lead in the 8th inning. And then the 8th inning has been a disaster for them.
How about you, James? Has this been hard to believe? 20 straight losses.
Uh, yes. I would say like, now that it hasn't been happening since '88. They're doing something that hasn't been done now that Tommy Pham and Martin Maldonado are gone. That hasn't been done in any of the players' lifetimes. Uh, it feels insane to consider. At least I think they've been playing the worst ball all season, which I know is a loaded statement, but also like an obvious statement since they're in the 20-game losing streak since like the Pittsburgh series. Like that was a level of like, I don't want to say incompetence, but certainly not competence on all levels of play defensively, like how bad their at-bats were with runners in scoring position, where it's like, it's kind of impossible for them to win this game. This isn't a coin flip. This is like, they're going to find the result they deserve because they keep risking the game breaking open with the way they're playing, like every inning, like it's going to happen. So on that, like they've been deserving it for a while. I thought that they came out like oddly, and I know like I don't think it got much traction in the VC chat, but the Monday before the trade deadline, I thought that was like the hardest I've seen them play this entire stretch. Like they came out strangely energized, like, hey, we just got like our team ripped out from under us, but we're gonna end the streak tonight type of energy. It didn't lead to like precise play. It just like they were clearly like they were overthrowing the cutoff man for high effort reasons as opposed to lazy reasons. They were running into outs for good reasons, that type of thing. But ever since like that waned away and since it didn't bear any fruit, they've like kind of gone back in this malaise. But at the same time, like, this is insane what we're watching. Like I feel like we're the frog in the pot that's like seeing the skin come off in our hands and saying like, actually, a StatDev research shows there's very little historical precedent for something like this. Like it's the level that we've got it to is like unimaginable. It's just that we've gradually gotten there in a way that's gotten used to us, where this isn't even the first record-breaking streak of the season. Yes, it's incredible that anything has reached this level. This is a level of terribleness and might outstrip anything that's happened in Major League Baseball, which has been around so long. There's a Ken Burns documentary around it. It's nuts what we're witnessing. Yes, I'm surprised. Like, how could anyone have seen what's happening coming?
You know, it's funny. Like, I'm doing a month in the box right now, and it's amazing.
Oh boy.
Well, in hindsight, it's just like amazing how the win total
box melted.
Yeah, like the win total stays at 27. Like that's what surprises me looking in hindsight. Like, oh, surely they've won a game. Like I know they haven't won a game, but I keep being surprised when looking at the game recaps. Another loss. Like the Paul DeYoung game in Texas where he puts them up in the 9th inning with a homer and then they still lose. Like that could have ended the losing streak at 9, and then they kept losing. So it's just that's what's I think shocking to me is like, and now I'm in the middle of it to where it feels like impossible they can win. But then when you step back and you kind of go back to the day-to-day, back when especially before the trade deadline, when they had talent, when they had like, major leaguers who other teams wanted to add to their teams, they were still losing games. It's basically evenly split between the trade deadline and afterwards, this losing streak, in terms of when they started dismantling the team. And there's no difference. I think that's the surprising part to me. The surprising part to me is like what's already happened. And now it feels like now that you've gutted the team, well, surely if they were that bad going into the trade deadline, how are they going to be better afterwards? And so you're inviting the question that you don't know the answer to. And the answer that we're getting right now is pretty gruesome.
And because of this losing streak, Bob Nightingale in his latest Sunday column every Sunday for the rest of the season, I'm sure Bob is going to have multiple notes regarding the Chicago White Sox from the USA Today. Bob shared a quick bullet point that Jerry Reinsdorf is fed up with the losing, so he met with Chris Getz and Pedro Grifol this past Wednesday. So before they even made their trek to Minneapolis, we don't know if Grifol was in serious jeopardy of losing his job. The last podcast we recorded was Thursday, and there just had a overall sense that something could be in the mix, and that's why we've been on Pedro Grifol watch, and what transpired this weekend's not helping his cause. But guys, things are getting weird with Grifol again. There's this quote from the Chicago Sun-Times, story that Daryl Van Schouwen did. And Grifol's quoted saying, quote, "You know what? I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. That gets taken out of context and somehow gets turned around over and over again, how people want to perceive it. Jerry's a winner, okay? He's an absolute winner. He's a competitor, No, he's not content. Who is? He's an incredible owner, an incredible man. I know how much he loves Chicago and how much he loves these fans. End quote. That's from Pedro Grifol. Jim and James. James, I'll start with you. And not because of timeliness, but has butt kissing ever worked for you? Has it ever gotten you ahead in life? Especially publicly butt kissing to the level that Pedro Grifol is doing right now for Jerry Reinsdorf a few days after meeting with him face to face about the team's lack of progress.
I don't think I've ever been at a level where people put enough stock into what I said that like just kind of my name is never meant enough where selling it out would be like a useful gesture. Like once I start butt kissing, I'm irrelevant because no one will care what I say because my word is worthless. So like me offering like Tony La Russa to like I'm gonna write like just an absolute paean to like your greatness. You'd be like, what use is this to me? Like people, my reputation is already there without your help. Like so no, I don't know. Like if you're asking me like have I ever gotten brownie points for doing something for my wife, then yes, it has worked for me. But if you're talking about just like offering plaudits I don't feel are deserved, people would just stop listening to me. So I always thought it was kind of an empty thing to traffic in, because if you're a known person who gives empty praise, then why would your empty praise mean anything? You can only really do it once.
So when you're in this situation, and we didn't send you up to Minneapolis this weekend, but when you're in this situation, does everyone kind of look at each other after he gives these types of quotes? And is it like side eye? Like what is the reaction when you're in his office, Grifol's office, and he's praising Jerry to the level that he's praising him?
I mean, the situation I find most analogous is that he kind of said all this when the last time we talked, when we did the one-on-one interview, and we talked about the reference to it gets taken out of context, because there he like basically requested like I don't want to like go on record about this, like I don't, and not because like this is secret information that I think Jerry, but like I don't want the purpose of this interview to just be like I said something nice about Jerry and everyone hates Jerry, and thus that's what the topic is. And I was like, all right. I mean, I figured I'd throw you a question, but that wasn't really what I was here for anyway. So we agreed to do it. But like his position is that like he thinks Jerry wants to win and is doing the right things to make it win. And he, doesn't fully get like he's, this is his second year here. He doesn't understand the entire, length of time and all the events that every fan base has been through with Jerry and why they feel that way. So I think there's a little bit of like, doesn't really get it. This guy seems fine to me. He hired me. He told me he wants to win type of mentality, but also, yeah, it's kind of over the top praise. And I think, that's obviously the person who's in control of his job and whether or not he's part of fixing this or anything. So it strikes more as it's not something he's necessarily done in group all the time, but I don't say we talk about it a ton as a beat. It's more just like it's known that that's his position, and that's obviously serves him to have that position theoretically. I don't know if it's really going to secure his future long term, given what the results are. But it's kind of part and parcel with everybody in this organization. Kind of talks up Jerry, and is that just the way people are going to talk about their boss in public, or does that show that it's something that's viewed as something you do to maintain your spot and maintain your influence in the organization to a degree? I bet they would push back on that a lot. I'm sure Jerry would, but it does seem something that's a very common theme that people who are put in positions of power in the organization kind of go out of their way to express public gratitude to him.
Yeah, it really feels, Jim, like kissing the ring for Pedro Grifol, but he's been kind of making out with the ring all season long. Now that the White Sox are 60 games below 500. And it's just not even like his quote about Jerry Reinsdorf. John Schriffen during the weekend, strongly, a bit surprising, but denying the 670 score report about clubhouse friction during the broadcast that it's not true because he spoke with Gavin Sheets, and Gavin Sheets says it's not true, and Gavin Sheets defends Pedro Grifol. I would love for Gavin Sheets to hit the ball over the fence for the first time in 2 months. Not that I really don't care about Gavin Sheets' thoughts on the clubhouse atmosphere, but things are getting weird, Jim. It's getting weird to the point that, you know what? Everything is true. There's great clubhouse friction. Pedro knows his time is up, and he's just trying to enjoy being a major league manager for how many days left that he gets to do it, because with this type of record and how poorly the last 2 seasons have gone, he probably doesn't get another chance to be a major league manager. So he's doing everything he can to stay in the chair and the office, and it just seems really weird. And I wonder, with the late night games and going to Oakland, it's just going to be more weird Monday through Wednesday.
Yeah, it's like late night games nobody's watching. Mod's asleep. Let Pedro Grifol still manage the team. That's kind of how I feel like they're going to approach this series. The ratings are going to be nothing, so may as well just let him keep working and hold off on making that call. It's funny. We'll turn this briefly into the Shrift in a minute, but I did think it was funny that he talked about Gavin Sheets, how he says the clubhouse is great. Then he says that Gavin Sheets, because he's a son of a ball player, very polished, always knows what to say. And it's like, well, there you go. Kind of proving the point that Gavin Sheets knows, how to publicly refer or not refer to any kind of clubhouse friction, talk around it, deny it, be very professional with his, with his interactions with the media, because he knows not to air dirty laundry, especially if he's somebody whose performance does not make him a fixture, does not make him a part of the next good White Sox team, or even, tradable to where he can't afford to rock the boat too much. So there's that. There's a little bit of, whether it's out of town stupid or just kind of being a tourist in Chicago to like the greater baseball problems. Although given that he was hired because he supposedly knew the baseball problems that White Sox fans had been enduring with, the whole effort level and such, and how they just weren't inspired, that you would think that he might be a little bit more aware of what the standards had been and how poorly they'd been enforced. And when you see that his record is what it is, you start to think like, changing it to me didn't change things. And, if he has a, healthy view of himself, even no matter what the record says, and he doesn't think the record reflects like how his managing skills truly are, you would think, well, there has to be something wrong with the organization at large. If, me, a decent baseball man, my reputation is being tarnished the way that it is because this team is just so bad. You'd think that, you'd think, oh, the problem is bigger. And maybe it does go up to whether it's Chris Getz or Jerry Reinsdorf. But because he has this laser-like focus on the baseball and the game today, and maybe the next 5 to 7 days out is the time frame he's referred to, that he's never going to be somebody who is just reflects a greater awareness of the bigger picture. Because, if he does, then that makes it pretty clear that he should have been fired months ago. And this is like a problem with, Reinsdorf. We saw this with Robin Ventura, is that I'm not sure if it's like a perverse brand of loyalty or whether it's like he just, he wants to be seen as loyal, when really it's just doing everybody a disservice. Like it's doing players a disservice to be talking about Grifol. It's doing Grifol a disservice to be talking about his job status every day and basically be, have a referendum on his ability to be a credible major league clubhouse presence every single day because he hasn't been fired because, the White Sox haven't been able to pull the plug on it. We saw with Ventura, his last month was the same thing, just every day answering questions about whether he's going to have to be around. And then at the end of the year, he has to fire himself. Like the White Sox didn't fire him. He said he didn't want to be back. And so he looks like a quitter. If you, just take him at his word or take the organization at its word. So it does nobody a favor. And yeah, it's just a very narrow-minded, myopic view of just how, by appealing to Reinsdorf and by appealing to his ego or trying to protect it, if you feel like, they're not so much kissing up to him as they are trying to protect him from criticism elsewhere, that it just makes everybody look insane. And, it's like the emperor has no clothes, except like there's a record telling everybody, he's naked. Like there's a record, historically terrible start through so many games, pointing out that like he does not care about winning, or nothing he does reflects that he cares about winning. And yet they have to keep saying that he's very upset. Like I took this meeting with Getz and Grifol to be like almost like the first time he looked at the standings, and just like, wait, what happened here? Oh, we got to talk. What are we going to do about this? Like that's kind of how I took it, just because like they had done nothing to reflect a greater urgency up until now.
Yeah, this is one of those, I would love to be a fly on the wall for this meeting, because I imagine this meeting went down, for those that are listening that live in the corporate world, that have 4 to 5 teams meetings, or if you're ever in the office, you're just loaded up with meetings every day. And the type of meeting is when your supervisor or superior calls you in and they ask you why we're not meeting our KPIs, or we're behind on the project timeline, and everyone's finding like excuses to point at each other, when everybody knows that it's the supervisor's fault because either they don't have the budget or they're not making decisions in a timely fashion. And I could imagine just going to that meeting, Jerry asking Grifol, why are we this bad? Grifol saying, well, the players suck. Jerry asking Getz, well, why do the players suck? Well, I don't think they suck. Grifol's not getting the most out of them. And Grifol and Getz can point the finger at each other, but then again, really the finger should be pointed at Jerry Reinsdorf and limiting or restricting or not expanding the business enough to generate the type of revenue for them to compete with the big boys, even though they are in Chicago. Everyone can point the finger at each other, but we'll see on who takes responsibility. I think ultimately Grifol is going to be toast no matter what, because the White Sox this season are now 8-34 against the American League Central. That's a 190 winning percentage. Grifol drops to 100 games below 500 for his managerial career. He's 88-188. And in 2024, the White Sox are 5-31 in the opening game of a series. That's a winning percentage of .139. So this losing streak could still continue through Monday night in Oakland. So I don't think Pedro Grifol is lawn for his job. However, maybe I'm a bit out of line with this question. Maybe I'm looking too much into this and overthinking. But James, if a general manager truly had control of baseball operations and baseball decision making, he would not need his boss to be in that meeting, nor would he need to be in that meeting with the manager getting questions from his boss.
I don't think there's any general manager in baseball who doesn't need the ownership approval to fire the manager.
Does he need the owner to be in the office, though?
Not in the office. He can deliver the news himself. But I think I think any owner would have to give sign up to fire a manager. It's just this one has been doing it long enough where the tendencies that he adheres to are pretty well documented, and I don't think they would be described as fast moving. And what really jars me about the meeting is that it's portrayed as kind of this move as a responsive, but it's so much slower than any organization would respond such a way. And I resent I don't like the manager conversations we have about managers in baseball are the dumbest conversations baseball media has. It's pure sewage 95% of the time.
Yeah, you are right, but my question to you,
just simply the standards of this industry are such that any other organization would have already done this move. And I don't think we're at the right calibration of where manager firings are just kind of, knee jerk, have to do it, firing for firing's sake, change for change's sake. But when you're at the absolute extreme end of the industry in terms of when you would say our standards of performance have been breached, we need change for change's sake, and you're simultaneously at that extreme end while getting the worst on-field results anyone has ever seen, I think you probably need to reevaluate how quickly you view these moves as necessary. And as much as I think so much talk about manager impact is confirmation bias based on speculation and narrative, the current, I don't know if the Phillies have fallen from the best team in baseball, but probably the elite team of this year is like the most clear manager change the performance level story that we've had in like the last decade. So being this kind of optimist of like, oh, we can't really, this roster's bad, which it is. You can't blame it all on Grifol. Like we're past that level of like, we're not trying to find one guy who did this. You're trying to like show that you'll respond to change anything in light of like historically bad results. And instead just kind of like, well, we're acknowledged that we've had a meeting, we're looking into it. It is so like that's 3-22 talk. Like we're here in August and we've like left behind the universe under which that would be like a normal response. Like that was months ago, man.
Yeah. Well, my question to you, James, was going to be about Getz. Is it fair to say there is a non-zero chance that Getz could be one and done as general manager of the White Sox?
I guess because I just don't know Jerry that well. He doesn't communicate with us a ton. Like his tendencies are his own. Like I wouldn't have said he was going to fire Rick and Kenny last year because that wasn't what anyone assumed that they would do. But I don't think so because
it would be crazy. It would be even more chaotic.
We're already having this conversation about how hard it is to hire a manager in the worst season ever with 1 year left in his contract and how slow moving that is. For them to redo a GM search that there was no real interest in doing last year, like assigning yourself extra homework when you clearly didn't want to like do the minimum. It doesn't seem like the nature of things are going. And I think, obviously like building the worst team ever is not a good credential, and I certainly don't think like the deadline earned a lot of raves on what he gets has done, this year as far as building for long term. But I think he's in a little bit different of a standpoint from the manager who's literally held responsible for on-field results as someone who's, pretty clearly was prepared to take a step back and not devote a lot of resources towards rescuing the standards of the Major League season. So that I think even if you could say like, yes, the Yankees would make him a one and done GM, or a premier organization that's used to like upholding a standard would probably say like, this is what's the hell's going on here. Let's move on. I don't think, given how, how uncertain it still is, that when Grifol is going to go, that such a larger move would be. That level of distaste with what's going on has not been expressed at that level to make me think that's coming. But who knows? This organization's a fun bag.
And then you have to remove the possibility of Getz resigning because like Reinsdorf does not allow people to resign. Like every time like Ventura gets fired, he wanted to resign. Rick Hahn tried to resign multiple times and couldn't. Like that's just seems to be how the organization is run or how it's framed after the fact. So I think even if Getz were like, I'm not sure if I'm cut out for this, or this is causing me stress, or like there's a, off-field issue, personal reason that popped up that I want to devote more time to. It doesn't seem like Reinsdorf allows people to leave or guilts them in, or somehow gets them in a position to where like they feel terrible for even suggesting that they're not cut out for this. So that's why I think it's probably zero unless some kind of like terrible scandal happens.
I can't see Chris viewing it that way. Like I think his larger view is like, I haven't really got my guys in yet. Like I don't have a team in my own image, or the prospects I'm trying to build, or the type of play I'm trying to solve. As much as like, yes, he's literally ran the farm system that produced this team. But I would think his larger view of this current roster is not like this. Well, this is what I had in mind and it's not working, and clearly I can't do this. I think it's more like I'm just getting started would be the way they view what they've done.
Oh no.
So far. Maybe they wouldn't phrase it that way. That's why I never got the look for the PR department after I got laid off last year. So
I doubt it. I would be shocked. But if Jerry Reinsdorf did another press conference at the end of the season, I think that would be the question that I would ask him, is just how much time are you going to give Getz? Because all these things that Chris Getz wants to do realistically takes like 3 to 5 years. And the whole point, again, Jim, something that you bring up all the time, the reason why Jerry didn't have a general manager search or interview process is that Getz could turn this around quickly. And with the White Sox, 60 games below 500, they finished the rest of the season 500, and they finished 51 and 111. The White Sox the next 5 seasons would have to go 87 and 75 each season just to get back to 500 for Chris Getz. Like, this season is destroying what his career winning percentage will be as a general manager, a hole that he may not be able to climb out of. So that's why I asked the question, because
I was trying to think of like who, if Jerry doesn't want to get to know new people, and that's kind of how he operates, is like he really doesn't want to bring anybody he doesn't know into the fold, then who gets hired to replace Getz? If Getz was like his big idea for replacing Williams and Hahn, which he said he didn't want to do in the first place, he got convinced to do it. Like, who would replace Getz? And I'm not sure if there's anybody there who he knows.
Do you make a phone call to Kim Ng?
He's got a job.
Yeah, I would say, like, does he know her in the way that, like, he's, Getz was there and supposedly running the farm system the way he thought a farm system should be run, which is another very funny quote that has aged poorly.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's what convinced him. But yeah, it's whenever I think about like him turning it around, it really seems now he just, instead of trying to turn the ship around, he just wants to burn it and then try to steal another boat and pretend he's that's the boat he built all along. Like, that's kind of how it seems like he needs to be able to proceed. Maybe Brian Bannister is kind of like the equivalent of stealing part of a boat or stealing some gas, because that might help in a way that people didn't expect. But when it comes to the rest of the roster and farm system, still a long ways away.
Quickly recapping what happened over the weekend in case that you did miss the games and you're just listening to this podcast. The White Sox, again, they were swept. They're outscored 29-11. They scored 7 runs on Sunday, so that's a good sign. It's the first time this season that the White Sox lost a game scoring 7 or more runs, and the White Sox finished 1-12 against the Minnesota Twins in his career. Pedro Grifol and the White Sox are 5-21 with him as manager against the Minnesota Twins. Late inning adventures in the 8th inning. So as I just mentioned, the Twins scored 29 runs against the White Sox. 12 of those 29 runs came in the 8th inning of the games. In the first game on Friday, the Twins scored 6 in the 8th, and then Saturday and Sunday, they scored 3 runs apiece in the 8th inning. And they've tried Steven Wilson. They've tried John Brabia James. Are they going to continue going back to those veterans, you think? Or are we going to start seeing new faces try to take on the 8th inning?
I mean, you'll probably see Justin Anderson mixed in there a lot more. Sometimes, like, his stuff clicks and he looks like he belongs. Sometimes he gets hit. I mean, we already saw Frazier Ellard kind of thrown into a unrealistic situation in his debut due to availability. You half wonder if, like, I think Tukey, obviously they piece so many games together with long relievers, and they so often need them. Like, they call up Kai Bush, who knows, like, if that's something that sticks or if they need to rotate one of their long relievers into the rotation again. But Tukey at least has a stuff at times where you look at it and you can see, like, it working in leverage, or at least worth a try. But yeah, Brebbia and Wilson are pretty much the only guys with any kind of leverage success in their history and their career path. If those two guys aren't pitching like good relievers, and they haven't been recently, like, there are no good relievers in this bullpen. Every inning is kind of an adventure, and when you don't even have Garrett Crochet or Eric Fetty credibly bringing you to like the 7th every single time, 2 times of the cycle, it gets really hard to find really viable opportunities, especially when your offense really isn't going to eclipse 3 runs without necessary prodding or a defensive gaffe or really well-timed home run somehow, which is not typical for them because their at bats with runners in scoring position fall apart approach-wise very consistently. The best, most talented hitter, Luis Robert, has insanely bad, runners in scoring position numbers relative to nobody on base. It's all kind of, as much as so many losses looked improbable going into this point, it's really all kind of geared to fail at some location somewhere over the course of 9 innings with the way their roster's been carved up by the deadline.
Some positives out of this weekend. Brooks Baldwin hit his first career home run. For the series, he went 4 for 12 with 3 strikeouts to just 1 walk. Miguel Vargas hit his first home run with the White Sox off a fastball against a right-handed pitcher. So good sign from Baldwin and Vargas. However, Vargas went 2 for 12 over the weekend, so he's now 2 for 20 with his start with the White Sox. He's already got 10 strikeouts in 5 games. And Brooks Baldwin on Sunday, there was runners on first and second with 2 outs, and Baldwin had a very costly error that allowed the game to continue, and the Twins ended up scoring 2 runs in the first inning. And that seemed to be a theme all weekend long, Jim, is the defense. It is getting sloppy again. The White Sox were only charged with 2 errors, but too many balls dropping in front of guys, bad routes are taken. And a lot of this direction is, again, going back to the highest paid player, Andrew Benintendi. Over the weekend, Benintendi did hit a home run. He went 3 for 11 at the plate. He's got 9 home runs on the season. But I'm also, again, judging the broadcasting for the radio and TV, you're getting 2 different sides of how it's being analyzed with Benintendi's play. But I can understand the rookie struggling defensively. But with how poorly Benintendi is defensively, Jim, I have this thought in my mind. Do we need to start talking about him getting DFA'd, not tendered in the offseason, and Jerry Reinsdorf eating more money because there's just really nothing positive about Benintendi's game right now?
That feels premature just because, we're 2 years into this, or approaching 2 years into this. And because of Pedro Grifol's tendency to just have undying faith in veterans, like a protected class of player, they haven't really tried anything yet. I mean, they've benched him a little bit here and there, or at least sat him. Maybe not benched him because that's more punitive, but like they've sat him in order to rest his, Achilles tendonitis, and maybe not playing him against lefties if there's like a strategic way to give him some rest. But they haven't expressed it in terms of he's not meeting standards. There's a whole mountain of evidence of just how poorly he's playing, whether it's because physically leading to mentally, perhaps both, to where just like the play is subpar, the effort's subpar. If he were Oscar Colas, he'd be getting reamed for just the lack of conviction in his routes or poor decisions. And I think, I assume Benintendi will survive the season. I assume Grifol might not survive the week. But I imagine like the next manager that has to come in, I would hope that Getz says like, hey, you're inheriting some players. Do not feel beholden to them, or like clean slate, but also judge them by what you need this team to be by the end of the year versus what, he's getting paid, and we'll deal with it. Like, I would hope that would be the approach they take. So that way the manager is empowered to make a hard call. And hopefully the manager has some, confidence, because this is partially where I wonder whether Grifol's background of not having any major league experience works against him, in terms of like, if he's afraid of alienating those proven players because they might turn on him. And, he's theoretically not one of them. Like, I've heard that coming up on a few different areas, like Trey Hillman. I remember when he was the Royals manager, that was kind of a point of contention. Yeah, he was big in Japan, but he didn't ultimately have the what it took to communicate to a major league clubhouse. Like, I could see that being the same thing. And if the next manager is somebody who does not have that working against him, or doesn't carry himself in that way, perhaps there will be a way of like, okay, we're 2 years into this, we're going to start managing Andrew Benintendi now, rather than having him manage himself.
I'd be okay if Chris Getz could figure out a way to sell 50 cents on the dollar to move Andrew Benintendi. I get what you're saying, Jim. There's just nothing physical that I could see Benintendi getting better at.
It would have to be like Eloy, right? Like paying most of the way, I think.
Yeah, but also like where the rest that they have to pay is only $1 million and not, 10 to 15. I think if anybody else unloaded that Benintendi contract, we'd be like, this man's a wizard. Like, if the Rays did that, we would demand an investigation from the league office. Like, $45 million in the history of this franchise to just dump it on somebody on a sub replacement season. Where the tools to look noticeably diminished. It's beyond what I would place reasonable expectations.
Okay, so it's not reasonable to cut Andrew Benintendi. 100% support trying to trade him.
Cut him? Sure. That's just the financials. To trade him successfully and unload the contract, I think would be unfeasible. To cut is merely just about, how much are you willing to suffer? But I would imagine it's more than what Reinsdorf is willing to make. It would definitely be like set a new precedent. I know they've eaten multiple years, but before, but never at this payment level. So I'd be surprised, but ultimately that's just something they could do. I don't think trading him is very realistic unless you have like an incredibly valuable asset, at which point we'd probably all freak out. Like, why did you tag the Benintendi contract or Crochet, and now all we got back was I'm in a reliever. Like the ways in which they do it, I don't think it would be worth it.
Got it. Understand. All right. Good points. Good points all around. I'm not seeing a path forward where Andrew Benintendi is a zero WAR major leaguer. Unless he completely swaps out his left arm for a mechanical robotic arm that Iron Man shoots the ball at 100 miles an hour to wherever he needs to go.
Hey, the White Sox had a left fielder who could reliably gun people down, and they sent him packing to Japan. So don't come.
The Diane Cannon.
The Diane Cannon.
What we talked about, Michael Kopech's immaculate inning is like a monkey paw, and it's kind of like the same thing with Benintendi. Like, if you told me he would be on pace for like 12 to 15 homers, like I think, oh, he's back, he's having a good season. And instead, like, that's all he has is double-digit homers and nothing else.
So that's what happened over this past weekend. Let's talk about what's coming up this week. The White Sox travel to Oakland for the last time. That's a bit bittersweet to say. And it still sucks for A's fans that they're going to be losing their baseball team, as they will be playing in Sacramento next year. And we'll see about Vegas. Things are getting murky in Las Vegas. The win-loss record for the A's, they're 46-67. They're last place in the American League West. They're just 13 games back, though, of first place Seattle. If you want to guess where the White Sox are, they are 41.5 games back at Cleveland. They're just a quarter of the season behind the Cleveland Guardians in the division. The thing that surprises me, though, Oakland's been playing pretty good ball at home. They're 27-29 this season. They are 5-5 in their last 10. They are on a 2-game losing streak because they hosted the Los Angeles Dodgers this past weekend. With the White Sox playing the last time at the Coliseum, James, did you ever cover games at the Coliseum?
Yes.
Okay.
One, I definitely went there pre 2020. I didn't go there for the 2020 playoff games, and I covered their series there in 2021. I've been there. I've gotten lost there. I've eaten at the food trucks there. I've done it all.
Okay. And Jim, you've been there. You liked the Coliseum, if I remember correctly, Jim.
I liked it for the experience. Like, I liked being among the fans there, because any fan who goes to the Coliseum to watch baseball is there to watch baseball. Similar to, I found a lot of kinship to White Sox fans and Guaranteed Rate Field, like going to the Bay Area. If you're a tourist and going to Chicago and the Cubs are on the road and the White Sox are home, you might think like, oh crap, I guess I'll go to a White Sox game because the Cubs aren't home. And so like I was predisposed to say like, well, give Oakland a chance, like, because that's how, I always feel like, the White Sox are, maybe not this year, but like Guaranteed Rate Field in previous years, like a decent place to watch a game if you are okay with it being not Wrigley. And so I went there with an open mind, and I enjoyed it for like its quirks, easy to get to, although you have like long walkway from the BART station to where like there's only one way to go to the Coliseum, but you're never quite sure if you're going the right way still, because it just kind of winds, and you don't see an entrance where people are going in. It's just following people down a passageway where you're seeing like knockoff t-shirts and loose cigarettes being sold. You're like, oh yeah, are we getting closer to baseball or farther away? And then turns out you're there, and the sight lines are bad, but you can make your own seat. Basically, fans are cool. You can see you can watch games from dead center field, which you can't really do at most parks. And so that's kind of neat. But otherwise, yeah, just more a matter of like, I like the spirit of the place, and I liked, the fans I talked to and the way they watched the game. And so I got enough of, experience out of that.
Did you ever meet any of the possums in the stadium, James?
No, possum incidents were like before and after me, but I never had a specific possum story I to deal with on my end. It's bittersweet in the sense of like, yeah, it's bitter that the Oakland is losing their team. As someone who grew up a White Sox fan, I burned that place to the ground. Just the remaining fan perspective I had. I only remember a house of horrors. I remember Paul Konerko's like, what was it, 400th career home run being immediately ruined the following inning. I don't know why. Even just covering that 2020 series, like I felt like I was having an anxiety attack every game. Just nothing. Can't recall positive things associated with the White Sox, but at least don't have a troubling footnote with them.
Yeah, Rick Renteria, hands on his knees, like hunched over in the dugout, like praying one of his relievers like would step up and save the game for him. Yeah, I get that.
There was that crazy comeback though a couple of years ago, wasn't it, in Oakland? Yes. Elvis Andrus, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was Oakland in 2022. Their little like shot of life moment. They rallied against AJ Puck of all people in that game. 2019, the first game like out of the All-Star break, or that was at least the first series out of the All-Star break. Dylan Covey was starting, and it was like his first time facing his old team.
Revenge game.
It was exactly. So it was like Lucas Giolito's birthday that morning, and it was like a day game, and he was just like chilling out. He had nothing to do, and he's like clearly just relaxed. And he like went up to Kobe, and he's like, Kobe is like a very soft-spoken guy, and Lucas is like very loud. And so like you're only hearing like Lucas's side and then like mumbling, and he's just like, "Are you ready, man? Today's your big day. It's revenge, baby. Go out there and dominate. You got this." And you're just hearing like, "Yeah, okay," like in response. And then Dylan doesn't make it out of the first inning, and they boot him out of the rotation immediately after that game. And I think they lost like their first 6 or 7 games out of the break. Something that at the time I thought was a horrifically long losing streak that kickstarted off that moment. Now it was probably, looking back, it's probably only like 6 or 7. They went 0 for the road trip, but then they went back to normal, like something banal compared to what we deal with now.
Yes, I do remember now that game back in 2022. They're down 3-0. They scored 5 in the 9th inning to steal that game. Yeah, Elvis Andrus had the big double to give the White Sox the lead that was the game-winning hit. Even Romy Gonzalez had a big hit. Yes, and that was when Andrus almost won me a steak dinner bet. At least was making a good comeback. I'm definitely going to win the steak dinner bet this season.
Revenge game.
The pitching problems for this series for the White Sox. So we have some excitement. Monday night, we're going to see another Major League Baseball debut. Ky Bush is the expected starter for the Chicago White Sox. This first pitch is going to be at 8:40 p.m. Central Time. Bush will be opposing fellow lefty J.P. Sears. Tuesday night at 8:40 p.m. Central Time, Jonathan Cannon will be facing Ross Stripling. And then Wednesday afternoon getaway day, this is a 2:37 p.m. Central Time start. Davis Martin, the Dart, will make the start against Joey Estes for the Oakland A's. Jim, you've gotten a chance to watch Ky Bush in person, in action. What should White Sox fans expect to see?
He's a big guy. I would say like he's Lucas Giolito-like, except left-handed, but just kind of the same frame, same size on the mound, but also has a little bit of that shortened arm swing to where it's a little bit deceptive. And, for somebody with this wingspan, the ball doesn't come out the way you think it might. Like when I take photos of him from the side, I had to learn to train my camera ahead because I was like naturally out of frame, like following the arm and following the ball. Like you'd just be too far in front. And the photo is poorly composed. So I had to learn to train like the focus behind, on the right side of the lens and be able to catch him as he's going forward, because like the ball hides behind him a little bit. So he's got that working for him. And I think when you look at his profile, both in Birmingham and Charlotte, once he got out of piggybacking on Mike Clevenger, and which I thought was weird, and like the strange prioritization of propping up Clevenger's White Sox prospects versus like turning the page on him and letting Ky Bush be more of the future, that the thread between the two is he limits hits pretty well. And that's something I think it's a little bit tricky to project when going to the major league level, because that's usually pretty hard to do if you don't have insane strikeout rates, or if you don't have like, really good walk rates. Like even somebody like Aaron Bummer, who's like really good at suppressing hard contact, like he still gives up hits because the contact does not work in his favor. So I think it's a case of, will Major League hitters be able to barrel up his stuff more than minor league hitters have? And will that cause him problems? But I'm hoping, knock on wood, because you never want to see a rookie just struggle. But beyond that, I'm hoping that, if the White Sox have what they think they have when they're calling him up, that he'll be pretty aggressive with the fastball and slider. The control will be pretty good. Command's decent, and he's pretty aggressive at throwing his slider to righties. He'll try to bury it down and in and get those swings over the top of it. So he's not just the lefty on lefty pitch. The changeup looked okay. Curveball looked like a little bit of a show me pitch that he used to more in second time through, third time through to change up sequences, but really seems like fastball slider will probably dictate his success, at least as long as he's able to throw. And I imagine if he gets 5 innings, in 75, 80 pitches, they won't go any further. They'll try to protect it because he's not overpowering in the classic sense, but he throws his fastball 94, 95 ish. So, there's more velocity than say Drew Thorpe is working with. So there is a major league toolkit here. I think it's just more of a matter of the way he's effective in the minors. Not sure if it'll cleanly translate against major league hitters.
A hitter to watch for Oakland is Brent Rooker. Brent Rooker this year has a 956 OPS. He's got 28 homers, 81 RBIs. 81 RBIs is good for 4th in Major League Baseball. Hot take, the White Sox need Brent Rooker, or they need someone to hit like Brent Rooker. That would make this season a lot more enjoyable.
I know we all enjoyed our time at the Negro League Museum, but you can't just go over and take players with you on the plane after the series like those enterprising gentlemen tended to do. That's just not the way GMs are built these days.
That'll be that'll be how the White Sox turn this around. They just steal other players and give them the White Sox uniform.
Getz just hanging out behind the other team's clubhouse with a wad of hundreds in his hand, saying, "Hey, there's a seat on the bus."
Here's a new driver's license. This is now your name. And we furnished a house for you. Lay low for a bit. And next year, you'll be our new third hitter.
Instead of Brent Rooker, you're now Rent Booker. Welcome. Welcome to the White Sox. We'll see how this series goes for the White Sox. Again, they're 5-31 in the opening game of series this year. So I'm not expecting great things on Monday. I hope Kai Busch holds his own. We'll see if the White Sox do pick up a win before heading home against the Cubs.
One thought I have in my mind here watching the White Sox defense in Minnesota is how many misadventures do you think the White Sox will have in the foul territory of the Coliseum next 3 games? More than one or one?
That's a good question. How do you feel, James?
I'll go literally 1.5 because I think there'll be one legitimate misplay and just one play that looks weird or they didn't pull off, but maybe just looked too hard. Maybe most teams wouldn't pull it off, but also most teams would look more credible in their attempt to pull it off type of misplay. So I think legitimately 1.5.
I'm going to say, I bet Andrew Vaughn makes a nice play in foul territory that shocks me. I don't know what the misadventure would be, tripping over the bullpen mound.
Yeah, there's that. There's a 2-base wild pitch. There's
that's happening. Yeah. That
or just 5 people scrambling for a ball that's 150 feet. At say Corey Lee tries to field a bunt, runs into the pitcher, fires the ball along the wall, and 3 people scramble after it. And Little League home run.
I'm expecting
a
lot of misadventures in the outfield. That's where I'm expecting it.
I've now developed a take. Vaughn is basically playing in his backyard. He's from the NorCal area. He'll be familiar with the dimensions from watching him on TV. And he just had a big game while he was playing through a sinus infection, whereas previously his hot streak was cued by him spraining his finger. And I asked him straight up, if you had a sprained finger but you scored in every game for the rest of your life, would you take it? And he did not hesitate by saying yes. So now my idea is that maladies that allow playing through pain is literally what sets Andrew Vaughn going. I think he can one man maybe hit a 3-run homer with an RBI double on top of it, make a couple of good defensive plays, and heroically go down as not someone who's not lived up to maybe the 3rd overall pick billing with his bat, but someone who ended the historic White Sox winning streak or losing streak.
And started a historic White Sox winning streak.
3 games.
Andrew Vaughn is going to rise to the occasion, according to James Fegan. and end this losing streak. We'll recap this series Wednesday night as we record a new podcast then and have it ready for you guys on Thursday, as Thursday could be a news day for the White Sox, depending on how this series goes against Oakland. Probably not depending. Maybe the decision has already been made after what has happened in Minneapolis this past weekend. Before we sign off, we'll look around Major League Baseball and what is catching our attention. And Jim, I'll start with you. What's catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
Padres looking feisty, and AJ Preller, like, he has a mustache now. Like, every time I see AJ Preller, I'm never positive it's him, or like never know when the photo was taken. Because in some photos he looks like he's 23, in other photos he looks like he's 62. Like, and depends on like whether he slept the previous night or like if he's smoking or something. But he has like he has eras like within weeks, it seems, for just how he looks and how he's composed. And right now it seems like he's got a mustache, I think, last time I saw him, and maybe that's working for him. But Padres are coming together while the Dodgers are wobbling a little bit, and the Dodgers, based on injuries and such, are kind of asking for a challenge. And the Diamondbacks were hovering at 5. Diamondbacks are getting hot too, but two of them, I think, are finally posing the challenge the Dodgers have been asking for. So I'm curious to see whether that's false hope or just a confluence of teams getting hot when they should have been a little bit better than they've shown, and one team being a little bit worse, but will ultimately right itself and they'll win the division by 10 games still. Probably what's most capturing my attention right now, because seeing Dylan Cease, reaching, even exceeding the kind of run he was on during his Cy Young runner-up season, I think is what drew me to them originally in terms of what they're doing. And then, basically since the deadline, doing even more.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks are also hot. They're just a half game back of the Padres in the National League West. The Dodgers lead is just down to 4.5 games against the Padres and 5 games ahead of the Diamondbacks. So that's a good one. Jim, how about you, James? What's catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
Oh, mostly just kind of looking at Sox players have been traded. Eric Fedde obviously had a pretty rough time, though it didn't look like there's a basket 3-run homer in the center of his inning. He certainly didn't look good, but also you could see, like, I've seen him navigate through innings like this, oddly enough, with better luck with the White Sox and not pay as much cost. So it's weird because, like, there was a little bit of, speculation maybe the Cardinals will extend him because he's kind of their type of pitcher, but to see him kind of have this bad first impression, not what I was expecting, but also kind of with the way he pitches and the level of contact he has, you think these sort of outings were inevitable. And if anything, the White Sox probably avoided them a bit more than they were due to. So to see some of them come in is not the most shocking thing. Eloy hasn't necessarily just immediately started launching booming home runs, and is hitting a lot of the low line drives that he was hitting a little bit in phases the last 3 or 4 games here. And even with his kind of initial great performance there in terms of results, you have the Orioles saying, like, hey, he's not really healthy. He can't really play as much as, like, he wants to have a new organization and new turnover, new leaf, and go back to the outfield. Like, we're not really going to clear him to do that either. So given how many bats they have, it's interesting that they're willing to devote it to Eloy and are definitely getting proceeds, and a lot of quotes from Eloy about how, like, he feels like he's been here a year and that he's vibing great. I imagine, as much as like any kind of cultural comment perks up our attention as evidence of what really is going on with the White Sox, I'd be shocked if anyone is not immediately elated to go from, like, being on the worst team of all time to a team that's winning any games, let alone being on the Orioles, which is just a much better organization objectively, and feeling like they're part of something new. So it certainly, as someone who felt like we got robbed of seeing the best Eloy I've seen, which is where he was in 2020 when he wasn't healthy for that playoff series, to see him, maybe some of those tools, as much as I don't think he's physically the same guy he was back then. It'd be interesting, at least me as a viewer, to see it on the high stage. I imagine it'd mostly be wickedly painful as a fan. I imagine saying it's bittersweet to see Eloy succeed in Baltimore is, the way I feel about people saying goodbye to the Oakland Coliseum is bittersweet. As a White Sox person, there's no positive memories that I can immediately recall on that. So I don't know if anyone wants anything but to see all the people that the White Sox sent away fall on their faces and maybe validate the organization. But for me, as someone who saw him as like an elite talent, to see if there's any of that accessible in the best possible situation is interesting.
Yeah, it'd be something if Baltimore picks up his club option after the season, James, because that would
Let's
surprise.
not get crazy here.
Well, I mean, it would surprise. But then watch him hit like 40 home runs with the Orioles next year. And then, yeah, the scrutiny about the White Sox player development would be twisted extra hard. Another extra hard twist.
It would be, but also at the same time, like, I don't think anyone would have told him, like, hey, keep going. This resurgence is right around the corner if he stays here. Like, you can't, as much as like any success he has going forward, like reflects poorly on here a lot. I wouldn't say that they should have not traded him. Like,
yes,
things had run their course.
For me, Aaron Judge, he's been fantastic. Great MVP debate. We had this topic before the All-Star break with Gunnar Henderson was leading the league in WAR and Juan Soto was having a terrific start to the season. It seems like for the American League MVP conversation, it's between Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt Jr. Aaron Judge has a chance of winning the Triple Crown this season. He has 41 home runs. That leads all of Major League Baseball. He's got 103 RBIs. That leads all of Major League Baseball. He's currently third in the American League in batting average. Aaron Judge is batting .322 this season. Bobby Witt is at .344. That might be too big of a gap for Judge to catch Bobby Witt with just how few games are left to go. But I'm not going to doubt Judge's ability to maybe catch Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt has ran out of games against the Chicago White Sox. So that may hurt his cause, but Bobby Witt's been awesome all season long. But that's something that did catch my attention when I saw that, hey, Judge had 41 homers and he's already over 100 RBIs. Oh, look, he's batting .322. Okay, he's pretty close to the batting title. Could we see another Triple Crown winner in 2024? That would be another feather in Judge's cap.
Especially now that Bobby Witt is done playing the White Sox. It's a blow to his batting average.
Yeah. Should be. And also I'm keeping an eye. I'm not worried about the Phillies, but the Phillies lead is down to 6 games in the National League East. They are 2-8 in their last 10. We'll see. Atlanta's got that National League East magic.
Yeah, just the Alex Anthopoulos, like doing anything at the deadline. I think that's his strength, is just scrambling and finding potential solutions and throwing him into a good situation. Like, I think he's done that before. And so, yeah, they had a kind of a bad loss to the Marlins to close it out, but could have that, that Eddie Rosario, Jock Peterson kind of return magic with Jorge Soler. Who knows?
That's true. That is true. So we'll see what happens around Major League Baseball this upcoming week. It's getting exciting. The division races are getting tighter. You still have 4 teams within 2 games of each other in the National League wild card. Should be a fun race all the way to the end of the season. And of course, who could forget the White Sox 20-game losing streak? That will be talked about around all channels of Major League Baseball. And how could it get so bad in the south side of Chicago? That will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen and watch the Sox Machine Podcast on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at Sox Machine_Josh, especially for some late night West Coast games that we have on Monday and Tuesday. Tweets will be firing off past 11 p.m. Central Time, so we hope that you guys stay up and watch the games along with us. If you don't, we understand. We're Sox Machine. We watch the White Sox, so you don't have to. For those that help support us through Patreon, thank you guys for your continued support. If you don't currently support us on Patreon and you want full access to our White Sox coverage, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Monthly plans start at $5. There's additional tiers where you get additional benefits. including ad-free versions of the podcast website and access to our group chat that we have, so you have direct access to Jim and James. If interested, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan and Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.